In this episode, we are going to set up the movement input, from creating the input action all the way to adding it into the mapping context for both the keyboard and the GamePad joystick. We are continuing our C++ third-person shooter series, and today we're going to dive into one of the most important systems in Unreal Engine 5, the Enhanced Input system. Instead of using the old input setup, Enhanced Input gives us a much more powerful and flexible way to define how the player interacts with our game. And in this video, we'll start right at the foundation, creating an input actions and organizing them into input mapping contexts. These two concepts are the building blocks of the entire system. Input actions let us describe what we want the player to do, like move, jump, or shoot, without locking us to a specific key or button. And the input mapping contexts give us the structure to decide when and how those actions are triggered. And in the next video, we'll implement the C++ code that actually uses these to bring our character to life. I am Tony Munoz. Comment your thoughts down below on your journey. Subscribe, like, share this video, and ring the bell so you don't miss the creation process of this third-person shooter completely free. And if you want to boost your game dev projects and career after office hours, visit Woolen.com and learn more about the Game Creator Accelerator, our lifetime mentorship program, and discover how it's making the difference with our free training, how to become a game-changer video game creator after your daily job. Now let's continue. Let's recapture the last stage from our previous video. If we play our game, we can see the capsule that represents our player, but we can't move in any direction. I can go Shift F1 and detach and see the capsule away, but there's nothing else I can do with my character at this moment. To make actions and movement with our character, we will use something called the Enhanced Input system, which was introduced in Unreal 5.1 and is an improve of the previous version. It's the modern framework for handling player input, and it replaces the older input mapping system and provides the developer with much more flexibility and control. To set up the input system, we first need to define actions. Instead of binding directly to keys or buttons, you define input actions that will be like jump, move, shoot, etc. These are abstract actions that you later map to physical inputs. Then you group input mappings into context. These contexts can be activated or deactivated at runtime so you can easily swap control schemes. For example, when in gameplay, the jump action is active. When in a menu, the confirm and the cancel actions are active instead. The Enhanced Input system adds advanced features over the old input setup. First one, we have modifiers that transform input values. Let's say invert an axis, a scale, stick, sensibility, etc. Don't worry, we're going to get into this. Then we have the triggers, which add conditions before an input is considered valid. Let's say, for example, require a button to hold for 0.5 seconds or detect double taps. And finally, we have value-based input that supports for complex input data like 2D vectors from thumbsticks or motion inputs. But let's get to the action. First, let's set up the input actions. In my games folder, I will create a new folder called Inputs. Open the folder, right-click and look for Input and select Input Action. Let's name this input action IA Move. Open it. In the value type, we will select, instead of digital bool, axis 2D vector 2D. An axis 2D vector 2D input action gives you two continuous values, which are X and Y, like a joystick's horizontal and vertical direction. Just do that, save, and let's close our input action. The next one, right-click, go to Input, and in this case, select Input Mapping Context. IMC, let's call it Player Context. Open it. In the input mapping context is where we're going to link the action we created with what is going to be the input of the keyboard, mouse, or gamepad. In mappings, click on the plus, and in the first one, select the action that you have at this point, which is the only one, move. Now open the action. You can select from the list what is the keyboard or anything that you want from your keyboard, mouse, or the gamepad. But you can also click here, and when it turns yellow, you can click the key that you want. Let's start with W. As you can see, it transformed this into a W. So we are relating the input action of move to the key W of my keyboard. And here you can see the triggers and modifiers. Before getting into the details, let's add the other keys I want to use. So click on the plus and select S for going backwards, A to go to the left, and D to go to the right. Remember that we set the value type of the action move as an axis 2D. By default, and we are going to click the D, we don't have to change anything or add the triggers or any modifiers. D will be the default, and D means that we're going to move the character to the right. Now let's go to the A. The A means that we're going to move the character to the left. I don't have to create another action for that. I just have to add a modifier. What kind of modifiers? I am going to negate, because I want to create the opposite action to D. What I'm saying is when I click A, you're going to do exactly an opposite to what I did on D. And if you wish to be more specific, you can go with each coordinate and decide which one you want to negate. In my case, I want to negate them all. So I leave it just as they are. Things get a little bit more tricky when we are using W and S. A little bit, just a little bit. Open the W, add one modifier, and select the option Swizzle Input Axis Values. This modifier simply rearrange or remaps the X, Y, and Z components of your input vector. If you open the index, you can see that you have a rearrange of Y, X, and Z. Originally, your map will be X, Y, and Z. With this modifier, we are saying that, well, I want to change the X with the Y, and the Z will leave it as it is. You can also select other different combinations. In my case, I just want to rearrange or remap the X and the Y. The reason is because I need to move this map in order to make my player moves forwards or backwards. And as you can imagine, for the last one, which is the S, we will select a modifier, which will be the Swizzle input, default as it is, but also another one, which will be a negation of that action. So it's the negation of the W. Finally, I also want to detect movement with the left joystick of my gamepad. So let's add another action mapping. And if you have your gamepad connected to your computer, you can select this keyboard. And instead of clicking the keys on your keyboard, you're going to move the left joystick. You can see that it detects only the Y-axis, which is not perfect. If it would be another button of the joystick, that would be fantastic, but I don't want just to detect Y-axis. Just for the case of the gamepad joysticks related to moving the joystick, I want to make a selection directly. So I'm going to remove this, add again, and in this case, I will pick gamepad and gamepad left thumbstick to the axis. This considers now the two axes, not just Y. For the gamepad, there are interesting modifiers that we can add. Let's go to the modifiers, add an extra modifier, and select the dead zone. By default, you have values that goes from the low threshold of 0.2 and 1, which are perfect. Dead zone is an important modifier to add when working with the gamepad joystick, because if you release the joystick, there could be a small amount in this threshold that generates false positives. I don't know if that happens to you before, but there are some games where you release the gamepad and the controls, and the player still continue moving. This is because the dead zone was not set perfectly for that type of controls. And even though the joystick is released, the engine is still perceiving some information that is making the character move forwards or look up or down. When we set the lower threshold in 0.2, it means that any stick movement smaller than 20% won't register. So that way we filters out tiny accidentally touches or stick drift. On the other side, the upper threshold makes a full detection when we reach the maximum input. And the last parameter of this modifier, which is the type smooth radial, what it does is that instead of cutting off input sharply, it smoothly blends values near the edge of the dead zone for more natural stick control. There is one more modifier I wish to add to the GamePad, which is called the Scalar. And what this does is that it guarantees that the scale for all the input axes will be full. Look that all the parameters for the different values of X, Y, and Z are 1. Let's save our input mapping, and we can close it now. We created our input action and added to a mapping context for both the keyboard and the gamepad joystick. With this foundation in place, our character is ready to start responding to movement input. In the next video, we'll take this setup into C++ and actually implemented the code that makes a character move using the enhanced input system. I'm Tony Munoz. Comment your thoughts down below on your journey and help me to support this channel by subscribing, liking, sharing this video, and ringing the bell so you don't miss the creation process of this third-person shooter completely free. If you are ready to boost your game dev projects and career after office hours, head over to woodland.com to learn more about the Game Creator Accelerator, our lifetime mentorship program, and check out our free training, How to Become a Game Changer Video Game Creator After Your Daily Job. Until next time, keep creating, keep sharing, and most importantly, keep dreaming big. I'll see you soon, my fellow creators.